It's been a long time coming for today's episode, so forgive me for putting you through like 3 other episodes just to get to my main point. But months ago, my Nana came over with a folder full of drawings that her dad had done, so my great-grandpa. And then she let me go through them and pick something to keep for myself. And as I sat there looking at this drawing of an open road with trees lining either side of it, it felt like an out-of-body experience. There I was, holding a piece of paper that my great-grandpa had held in his hands as a boy. And as I looked at it for the first time, I was picturing him sitting at the bottom of a tree and just drawing what he saw, simply because he could. Yet when I think about him in that moment, I will truly never know what he was thinking. And he will have never known that one day, his great-granddaughter, who he'd never meet, would be holding it in her hands. He would never know that a drawing that he had done years ago would one day inspire an entire podcast series on time and how we perceive it. In that moment, when I looked at the sketch, it really separated me from my sense of reality and time. I realized that someone that I never got to meet was able to create a lasting impact on my life, and they would never know about it. My great-grandpa had transcended time, and I could never tell him about it. So that's what today is about. It's about legacy. Something that's a very timely and interesting conversation when we're talking about legacy and time is the new Bob Dylan biopic called A Complete Unknown. When this movie was first announced, I wasn't like head over heels had to be there, but really the press tour got me. I was highly intrigued, especially when the trailer came out. I was just really interested to see how they would do it, so I made a point of going to see it in theaters when it came out, and it turned out to be better than I ever could have imagined. Here's a journal entry I wrote after just getting out of the theater. I just got out of watching A Complete Unknown, and I was absolutely struck. I've spent the last 20 minutes dancing to Bob Dylan and Joan Baez in my room, and I think I'd like to spend my entire life dancing in this room. It's been a while since I've sat in a theater and just stared at a screen as the credits rolled. I don't even care if people feel differently about the movie, because to me, it was real. It truly transported me back to a time that was never reality to me. And it's funny because we commend Dylan with so many words, yet all he was just himself. Now, I'm not a movie buff whatsoever, but after watching that movie, I was just amazed at what Timothée Chalamet was able to do. I understand that people are very capable of learning an instrument and learning to sing, but the way that he was able to breathe life into the music and the harmonica and the guitar amazed me. There was countless moments in the movie that the music was the magic rather than the acting. There was a moment where Timothy and Monica Barbero, who plays Joan Baez in the movie, were singing It Ain't Me Babe, and it almost brought me to tears. And then I had to clock myself and remember that these people were actors. Yet they tapped so beautifully into my mind and my heart that I forgot it was acting. And in the context of legacy, it was a surreal experience to sit there and see someone from my generation bring to life a time that both of us never got to see. It's weird because when you go to see a film, often they play out like a story in front of your eyes, and it feels like magic. It feels like fiction. But that movie depicted real life. And the music that we have from the 60s is a testament to that and is what keeps it alive. Again, it's what you leave behind that leaves a legacy. Before I saw the movie, I listened to a really good podcast interview with Timothée Chalamet. It was done by Zane Lowe. Zane Lowe is an interviewer who has made a career out of just asking awesome questions to musicians that he really respects and is inspired by, and he does a really good job. I always enjoy a lot of his work. But anyways, I was listening to this interview that he did with Timothée Chalamet for A Complete Unknown. And I was just in awe of the creative mind and what someone could bring themselves to accomplish. The concept of Timothy playing someone with such a massive legacy while at the same time building his own legacy was so fascinating to me. And then how Timothy would go about playing Bob Dylan since Bob is still alive, and what a weird feeling it would be to have to embody someone that isn't you and have them be able to then watch it and judge how you did it. It's no secret that Bob Dylan's and Timothée Chalamet's legacy will be completely different, and arguably Bob Dylan's is probably different than anybody else's. But that's the beauty of all of it. I mean, honestly, if I'm really sitting here and being real, of course the reason that I write is because I eventually hope that one day I can say something that means something. And on a personal level, of course there is meaning to my words if I've come to teach myself lessons through dissecting things that I've gone through. But what assumption could I ever make that they've ever been strong enough to do the same for someone else? And how could I ever get there? I find it just fascinating listening to Timothy and hearing him talk about the creative extension that his mind went to embody a 60s version of Bob Dylan. What he could connect to, what he didn't understand, what he lacked, and then what he knew that he could do. And as he's speaking about it, he almost gives credit to everybody around him, to his harmonica coach, to his guitar coach, to his movement coach, to his mentors. All people that have such specialized skill to such a high level that they assist a generational actor in how to depict a multi-generational musician. Yet, you'd have to search to know their name, and I would never recognize their face. Legacy is in all of us. But what's even more fascinating is when we hone in on the conversation of Bob Dylan. They sensationalized the least sensationalizable artist. But if we talk on biopics as a whole, each biopic is done completely different because they all follow very different types of artists. And yet they're all meticulously trying to recreate what made that artist great. But what made that artist great was an abnormality. We have this weird passing obsession with greatness and trying to box it up and label it. But the fact that it was labelless was the entire point. It's our obsession with trying to understand the things that are unknown to us, which brings us to this idea of perception. When a musician creates something that's great to them, like truly great, it brings more than just a smile to their face. It's a sense of finally being able to put words worth saying to a feeling. But that creation and sense of accomplishment can only truly be felt through themselves and concluded by their own perception of life, because they are the only ones that will ever live in their mind. Something that's great to us that they've done might have been their least favorite piece of work, and it's because we've all built our reality based on what we've seen or been through in our own lives. But more often than not, we see legacy as a word that is only applicable to pioneers of something or heroes, from past world leaders to current day athletes. We reserve the word legacy for the greats of society. But I'd like to challenge that belief today. You need to stop looking at yourself in the space of life that you're in and thinking that you need to be anything other than who you are. Timothy told this very inspiring testament of his experience of trying to embody Bob Dylan and not knowing how to go about it. He realized he was trying to be Bob the way Austin Butler had been Elvis, but Bob and Elvis are not anything alike, so he could not do it the same way. And we can take this lesson and apply it to our own lives. You need to embrace what you're good at rather than embodying someone that you're not. If we can take one more lesson from Bob Dylan, it is that he used what he had. The reason he became who he was because he lived his life as himself. Your legacy comes down to your self-perception. There seems to be this inherent disbelief in ourselves. I grew up hearing stories of the Bible and the written testimonies of God using the least likely person possible. In all cases, there's this expression from the individual saying, "Why me? How could I possibly have any value or worth?" We all think this way. I think this way all the time. I'm writing this episode and recording it right now, but in another notes app on my phone, it's full of expressions of self-doubt that I have in myself. But it's so important that we catch ourselves in these thought processes because it is so clearly not helping us in any way. When I was writing this episode, I came across a quote from Kurt Cobain. He says, "Wanting to be someone else is a waste of the person that you are." I want you to think about all the people that you love in your life and how they are all different. If you made them anyone else, they'd lose what makes you love them and what makes them who they are. It's funny how we determine success. It's like we attribute the word millionaire to success and see ourselves as less than because of money disparity. Yet, it is only how I see what I have and how I choose to use it that determines my success. A millionaire could donate a percentage of their profits every month or nothing at all because they have free will. I could donate a percentage of my profits every month or nothing at all because I share the same free will. It's what you choose to do with what you have that truly makes the difference. But to steer away from money, because that's not the point of today's episode, let's really bring it down to the basics. Kindness. Nothing will teach you more about kindness than a customer service or retail job. Working customer service was what made me believe in energies in people, and I don't even mean that in a spiritual way, but simply just in how they carry themselves. I've learned just how fragile our emotional states are and just how true body language and social psychology really are. I had this regular customer once that I will always remember. One shift, they ended up coming in and confiding something really difficult that they're going through at the time. But the one thing I noticed about them was that every time they went to walk out the door, they always said thank you and have a good day. That person, I know for a fact, had nothing left to give. But they always gave kindness. And it has gone the distance in my life, and it affects the way I think about my interactions with the people around me on a weekly basis. I don't say this to say go and be perfect and never be sad and never have a bad day. But I say it to exemplify the fact that you don't have to have a lot to leave something, to make a difference, and to leave a legacy. And to go even a step further, I'd say that everything that leaves a good legacy is already inside of you. I said last episode that it can be hard to learn the lesson that placing value into things that can be taken from us is not the safest place for our hopes and dreams. And I really believe that. I believe that we're better off if we place our self-worth into how we treat others, ourselves, and the world, rather than into what we've done or what we own. It has been so important for me to learn to see success beyond achievement and to challenge my own beliefs that I must become someone worthy to be important. After listening to countless interviews and watching many videos that Timothy did before the release of A Complete Unknown, I would bet money on the fact that he learned so much from portraying Bob Dylan alone that even if the movie flopped, even if people walked out of the theater and said it sucked, that he would still be able to rest in the fact that he was proud of it. Because for him, the value of the project wasn't the result, it was the process. When I sit here and I think about my great-grandpa, all I can think about is how much of an impact he left on me and the fact that he'll never know it. But with that added perspective of just how much value he brought into my life, I can then see the ways that I bring value into people's lives without me knowing it, and you would do the same. Everyone watching this video would do the same. And if we can then step into knowing that, we can see that our actions go beyond us, which leads me to believe that it is truly not about the amount of people you reach, but rather the depths that you reach within them. The reason that documentation transcends time is because as I sat there holding the drawing that my great-grandpa had done, I also had the knowledge of the way that his life would play out before the version of him that drew it would ever have known. I think about which thoughts might have been running through his head that day, why he was drawing it, what caught his attention, what worried him about the times that he was living in, and what he dreamt of becoming. I wonder all of these things, yet I still have more knowledge on his life than he did at the time. I saw the way he drew nature only to become a botanist. It almost gave me this omniscient perspective on his life. And the more you think about it, the more insane it becomes. There is a moment in time that I'll never reach where my great-granddaughter will be looking at me, hopefully watching this video because that would just be insane. But our ability to document our lives is how we leave a legacy. Like me recording and uploading these videos is leaving a legacy. There's a digital 22-year-old version of me that will always exist. And maybe one day my 22-year-old daughter will be able to watch me at the same age as she is. Now that transcends time. And this video won't need 12 million views to make that true. It was true for my great-grandpa, and all he needed was a pencil and a piece of paper. So start writing about your life. Start drawing your life. Document it, and then put it away in your drawer for you to find in 12 months' time. When I watched the show One Tree Hill for the first time, I was inspired by their time capsule episode to write myself a letter. And ever since then, I pick a day around the beginning of January to open all my letters, and I start reading them from the beginning in 2015. And then I write myself a brand new one, and then I do it every year. I promise you that if you begin to do the same, your words from the past will make you disassociate from the present. It's the weirdest sensation ever to remember vividly what emotions you felt at 13, but not recognize them in yourself now, or to notice the parts of you that have stayed fluid all along. The last 20 minutes of A Complete Unknown is some of the best new film I've seen in a very long time. And I won't spoil it because I really hope that you guys go see it eventually. But it takes place following Bob Dylan in 1965 at the Newport Folk Festival. This was a festival that was created with the intentions of celebrating folk. But as a result of time passing, it eventually became one that only wanted to celebrate folk. When Bob Dylan took the stage with his electric guitar, he defied orders and played what people did not want to hear, but exactly what he wanted to make. And it only highlights the fact that the best music an artist can make is when they choose to honor what is true to them. Bob Dylan was ridiculed by the audience for that performance, and what he played on that stage would soon become the song that I would say is the one he's the most recognized for, Like a Rolling Stone. Bob believed so much in what he had to share that he did it despite the hate. It was simply his choice to stand up and to continue playing that has left his legacy. Imagine a world where he didn't, where he got up, gave in, and played the same folk songs that he always had. Timothy's depiction of that moment in time will be a scene that is burned into my brain for months. The complication with my generation and living half of our lives online is that we think the ultimate goal is to be someone else. We endlessly consume content from people that seemingly know exactly who they are and what they want from life. And we see it and think that replicating it is our key to happiness too. But what we lack to acknowledge is that we're trying to use other people's keys in our own doors. Don't do this. Use your own key. It brings me back to what I was saying earlier about Timothy struggling with how he was going to depict Bob Dylan and looking to Austin for inspiration of how he did Elvis, and how he quickly learned that that was not going to be the path that he could take. Life is not about mimicking others in hopes for the same success, but rather about having the courage to follow our spark when we feel it, having the self-assurance to stand tall on the stage, and to play your music, even if people boo you. Let's let music bring us together, and don't forget to grow up slowly.